Hi, before beginning, I would like to ask you something. Please raise your hands, those of you who know of someone who is or has ever suffered from depression. Look around. Depression? Yeah, indeed, PhD associates to depression. Depression is a very common disease. Over 300 million people suffer from depression around the world. To have an approximate idea, it would be like having the whole population of the United States depressed. But why is that? Well, the treatments that these patients are given do not work in 40% of the times. That's a lot. So that's why many scientists, including me, we are studying the genetics of depression to develop better treatments that suits perfectly these patients. But how am I doing that? Well, am I a doctor working directly with the patients? Well, no, I'm doing the PhD, so I cannot be a doctor yet. So I don't work with patients. Am I working in a lab? No, I'm not. And don't worry, I don't experiment with animals. But I work with a computer. Yes, with a computer. But what exactly am I doing? I'm collecting data. I take all the scientific articles that have been published, which are a lot. So you can imagine it's like the height of Mount Everest with all the articles, putting them together. But not just that, 5 times more. So that's a lot. I don't have to read them, at least not all of them, but my computer does it for me. So then I also collect data from the population. So I have patients that have been diagnosed from depression, and then I have the general population. They have given their DNA, and I compare it. So I can take the differences between these two, between the patients and the general population. Then I put all this data that I've collected in my computer, and I create my library of this huge amount of data I was telling you about. So I start to play with my data. You can all recognize this type of puzzles, right? We have all played when we were kids. Well, my data looks like this, more or less. We have different pieces that all together can make a message. In my case, it talks me about depression. But let's look at these little pieces a bit deeper. Well, we have these first pieces that look like squares with some holes in it. These are my genes that are in the DNA. And then we have these numbers and letters that would be my regulators of the genes. That altogether, they separately have different colors, shapes, and do not make sense really. But if we put them together, we can start deciphering the message that these pieces try to send us. So this makes more sense, right? We can start seeing depression. Well, we can see something here. So with my data, I do the same, more or less. So we have the different genes and the regulators that attach to those genes and that finally lead to depression. So to recapitulate a bit, I have collected all the data from the scientific articles and from the population, and I have these pieces of data, separate pieces of data, that the holes and the letters, that would be my genes and the regulators, that separately we don't really get a message, but if we start to put them together, we can decipher the message that it's behind, that it tells me about something, depression, but in my case, I want to study the gene regulation of these genes, well, how the regulators attach to those genes. That finally gives me the final message that it's depression. I'm sorry, I cannot tell you the final answer of how these genes regulate and lead to the depression. That's what my project is about. Maybe I will tell you next year or a few more. And my final goal is to develop better treatments that suit perfectly these patients. So our first patient, Sadness, has given her treatment, but not just her. All patients that suffer from depression will be treated with the perfect treatment that they need. Name it Igor, Jerry, or Lisa. Thank you all for listening.